Good afternoon, dear listeners. Thank you for being with us. This is a busy day. We've had a busy week. We have busy months and years, and I believe that it's not over. And something has happened. There was a commission inquiry, national, to which I participated. You saw there were several testimonials at all levels, some judiciary, some on rights, health, post-vandalism on the tests, epidemic, pandemic, something also depends on how people were discussing it. Briefly, we noticed that it was a political epidemic mostly. We could say political media. This is what came out of the commission mostly. A lot of lies, a lot of things not said, a lot of data missing. But there was somebody who was invited. She wanted to come and speak up, and she wasn't able to present herself for certain reasons. She'll tell us about the reasons. You must be looking forward to hearing her. And so, without further ado, I welcome Gloriane Blais. Hello, Gloriane. Hello, Danielle. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you for being here. It's I myself who thanks you. Well, it's my pleasure. We were side by side sitting, and we're going to speak in a personal way. I won't say Madame Blais, but I could say in a very honorable way. Gloriane was there. She saw what took place. She saw how the commission was working. Yes, very professional. Well, first of all, what was your global impression? How did you quickly, with a few words, how did you find the commission in its entirety? Well, of course, I didn't assist and listen to all the testimonials. We understand that it's a commission, an inquiry, a national inquiry for the citizens, as their name says in French and in English, National Citizens Inquiry. And there were audiences in every province from Vancouver, Nova Scotia, including Toronto. And now, today, it's the first of the last 3 days, which took place in our national capital, Canadian national capital in Ottawa. And so I assisted to a part in Quebec. The first day I couldn't be there for family reasons. My son was a little sick. And when I arrived in Quebec, I saw you. I saw Caroline Maillot, André Pitt, and there was one place left. So I sat with you, with your authorization, of course. And I really found it extremely professional. You know, the people are sworn in at the beginning. If they say something, it's the witness who assumes his words. When we're sworn under oath, it's not the commissioner or in a judiciary forum. The words from the witness is taking the risk of his words. Yes, and he has to swear for the people and for those who saw it and didn't see it. I swear to tell the whole truth and just the truth. It's really the oath of the witness, exactly. As I remember, Hélène Banot and a few others that I heard, when we're experts, we're there to bring a testimonial which is factual on facts, based on facts. So we must say only the truth. When we're experts, also, we bring opinions. So the opinions are more delicate. We must say the whole truth, but in circumstances, of course, we remain in our opinions. We understand that we still have opinions. And so when I arrived in Quebec, it was Friday morning. There was the testimonial of Carole Lavoine, a victim of the secondary effects. It was very touching. There were others. I'm speaking of her because I had told her that I would be present for her. There was Christine Coton, who in November 2021, she was in the file for the son of Pascal Antonin. I had managed to convince her, it was Stéphane Guy who introduced her to me in Quebec. I had managed to convince her to jump into the pool, even though she saw what was happening between knowing and being able to speak, making a report. She finally accepted to do an expert's report, which I deposited. It's extremely solid. I deposited in Pascal Antonin's file in the Court of Appeal. And this is a report which has now been shared by Peter McCullough, cardiologist, well-known cardiologist in the United States, in the United Kingdom. There was Dr. Assem, who speaks a lot. So his expert report travels throughout the world now in French and English, and it's based only on Pfizer's documents. There's no invention here. it's based on the trustability of the clinical tests. And so her testimonial was very touching, and she knows it by heart, basically. I deposited Hélène Dagnon's one of her extracts on the 19th of April 2023 in front of the Disciplinary Council. She had just published it, shared it, I think the day before. She shared it with me the same morning of the audience on the fact that the FDA, amongst others, she knows it very well, the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, knew in February 2021 that Lauriane Messager would be taking her, was going into the kindergartens, that it was the ARN was going into the different placentas. Yes, we heard that in the commission. Somebody who came and testified, we noted it following this. It's very obvious. It's terrible. Excuse me? No, but that's it. And just a note, because some would want us to forget, but I just want to show some news from July 2022. The scandal. Pfizer admits to the tribunal that the American government knew that their tests were fraudulent. And this, they had admitted it. And we also had, as we saw, the report from Pfizer, which had to come out in 75 years. So those who speak of those who were completists, there was the dictate from the court that said you were going to get out your report as soon as possible, not in 75 years. So it's quite abhorrent, yes. And it's thanks to, I want to say it, my former American colleagues, we're talking about lawyers, my former colleagues, because I'm no longer a lawyer, American colleagues who were not radiated, they were not debarred. So it's thanks to the Haran series of this world, an American lawyer who is at the forefront of all of this, and others, I'm not saying it's just him, who did everything, all of these courageous acts, and who were not radiated, who were not barred from their orders. And so something happened to you. Something unique happened to you in the Western world. You hold a special place. I would say that it's Quebec which holds a special place. And I love my Quebec, for what I do, and Canada and humanity. But I can say that this is not something that is beautiful. We're the only jurisdiction means either a state or a country, a province, the only jurisdiction in the Western world, so Europe, where they're not countries that are in announced dictatures. So Europe, United States, and a little bit more, the Western world. So it's the only jurisdiction in the Western world, Quebec, to have barred a lawyer going by the proposals, that the words I said in 2021, yes, it's very special. And the reasons they gave was that it was for an evaluation in psychiatric evaluation. Yes, I had 2 disciplinary complaints. We'll go very quickly on this aspect, not because I don't want to talk about it, but just to not take up too much time exclusively on this. I had never received any disciplinary complaints from 1995 when I was a lawyer until 2021, the beginning of 2021. In 2021, I received a first disciplinary complaint on my proposals in a demand of authorization in an appeal to the Supreme Court in a file for my client against Investment Quebec, a society of the state, intentional fault that took place at the time of our dear Prime Minister Jean Charest. All this to say that I have proof that the Supreme Court did not failed to reform a judgment that had voluntarily lacked impartiality, because the judge had great lackings in his judgment, the judge of the proceedings. He's very competent. He was my favorite judge, Martin Bureau. So we're not saying that the judge was not competent, that he made a really messy sentence. He was competent, but he lacked integrity. I imagine he was threatened. And the most important point that we must retain is that the Supreme Court refused the demand of authorization of appeal. It failed to reform this judgment on the basis of 14 volumes of proof, 2,000 pages of proof. And I received the judgment on the 8th of July, 2021 recently, and they introduced to me a disciplinary complaint before receiving the judgment And the day that the Supreme Court of Canada rejected the demand of authorization of appeal, that it failed on its judgment, the 8th of July, 2021, the same day, signed on the same day, I received the second disciplinary complaint on my proposals on the experimental injection in spring 2021. I was the only lawyer at that time who was speaking of the dangerousness, the risk, because it was the risk. You weren't claiming anything directly, but you had doubts as to the risk. The risk. We saw the precaution, the principle of precaution. It was the basic principle, and the benefit of the risks. And for me, it was specifically for the children, but also for all of humans. By September 2021, I started saying it was dangerous because we started having experts speaking. So I was practicing in medical responsibility. I have a certificate in second cycle of law. I did law in pharmaceuticals, law in international health. I did law course in public health. I don't say I'm an expert in public health. That's not what I'm saying, but I know the great principles. It's logic anyway. And I also knew that as a lawyer, the pharmaceutical law, and so I can repeat what I said when I was a lawyer because a lawyer said it. Pharmaceutical law in Canada, the pharmaceutical companies have the right to self-regulate. This means that they're the ones who verify themselves, but amongst themselves, to verify if everything is okay, just to vulgarize things. So all that to say that when I started speaking in spring 2021, it's because I thought it was terrible that we were vaccinating with an experimental injection. And so, yes, and I have a point on that too. You're talking about experts and everything. You're not an expert in health. You never proclaimed yourself to be an expert in health. It's funny when we hear these terms because the Minister of Health, to my knowledge, was looking for his doctor's diploma. I was looking for this, but I didn't find it. He didn't have it, did he? He and I are neither doctors nor scientists. However, what I have more than him is that I'm an expert in law in health. I did files in responsibility in medical health, medical malpractice in English, and I did a big file in obstetrics, very well known by lawyers in health, and I won in very high levels. And there was one known one that we had to do all the stages. We won it at all the stages, files in obstetrics, documents of malpractice, the medical fault. And in obstetrics, it's the most difficult files to win in the proceedings. And I won them alone, David against a big monster. And of course, I had exceptional clients. But you said you were talking of malpractice. Just a reminder for the people. There were medical errors in Quebec each year, and we're not talking about tens of medical errors. It's always thousands of medical errors in Quebec alone. If I remember correctly, but I want to under reserve of what I'm saying, it seems to me that there was a study in the US, and I think it was the third cause of death. It was medical error. And what I'm surprised, this is a parenthesis, I'm surprised that the medicines don't make an honorable statement that considering everything that we're seeing, these deaths, we made a mistake. I'm surprised, but at the same time, seeing as I know the domain very well, sometimes I ask the question, would they perhaps have hidden other errors from before, so they're a little bit used to these systems of lies? It's interesting. I'm asking questions because over the years, your question is good. It makes one think because over the years in Quebec, we had thousands of cases. People who often made complaints. There were reports over the years to this subject. It seems like they've disappeared. Somehow they disappeared from 2022 to 2023. But there were errors. And I find it's interesting because there's a special culture, in short. We saw it in the commission, amongst other things. What we're discussing is it's even more direct at the commission as to what was said. Well, there we go. But I also listened a little bit to the testimonials today in Ottawa. There was a lady, and I should have taken her name. She comes from the UK, from England, and she's an expert in finances. And I shared my Twitter account with her. It's the only thing I shared today about the commission. It was an extraordinary testimonial that all the political men, all the politicians of this world should listen to. Also, Michel Stodowski, excuse me, I have a difficulty with pronunciation. And on Saturday morning, I was meant to pass just after him in Quebec. It was extraordinary, his testimonial. All the testimonials, it's fair to say, that's his name, yes. And Chostudowski, he wrote books that are very pertinent. He's an expert economist on the worldwide economy. He worked, amongst other things, for the Monde Diplomatique as a journalist. He's an expert in geopolitics. We're not talking about anybody. And he's at the very, very end of his career. And why is he speaking? It's not for him. You know, the people who speak, it's not for themselves. We risk everything. And it's funny because on Wikipedia, the false encyclopedia, you go see what they say about me. You'll see. It must be nice. Yes, but he was a worldwide sommity. He did a web page on mondialisation, globalization, and then he wrote the theory of complotism. And this is what's written about him in Wikipon, which is a false encyclopedia. But we're not close to the jokes today. All this to say that this commission inquiry, national inquiry for citizens, because it's not a public commission in the sense that it doesn't come from a governmental institution, but it's just as noble. But it remains that the testimonials that are there, they're good. The process, all the witnesses, I didn't say to anybody, not to Christine Coton or to others, don't go and testify. It's like, you're not censored, go. And they said what they had needed to say. I didn't hear about anybody who was told, choose that word, don't say that word. So we must not throw the baby out in the bathwater. So yes, let's look at the definition. Some people ask me, what's the point? Will it bring anything? Yes, it will bring things, an awakening. Yes. If there were people who were waiting for things to happen right away, no, of course not. Here's the definition. Well, let's take the time to read it. You know, at large, the first paragraph, it's the introduction, the measures which the federal and provincial governments took facing COVID in Canada without precedent. And more the reports are coming out. The damages of this management, we see them. So, in fact, the measures in question affected the physical and mental health, the civil and fundamental freedoms, employment and means of subsistence. It's not nothing, and the well-being, the social well-being and economic for all Canadians. So there was a need to demand an exhaustive national inquiry, transparent and objective, with the goal to determine the usefulness and the efficiency of these measures and to draw the necessary lessons for the future. No other inquiry would be launched inaudible facing the measures that were taken during COVID-19. And the National Inquiry Commission comes from an entirely independent initiative directed by the citizens. It's not financed by the government, nothing like that. At the beginning of 2023, the CNC will hear the testimonials of expert Canadians, which is taking place now, and will examine the politics of the government facing COVID-19 in a just and impartial manner. The CNC has the objective to listen, learn, and propose recommendations. It also proposes to establish what went well and what didn't go well. Inaudible? and take into account the interests of all the members of our society. So we have this definition. I'd just like to say, before going any further in terms of the definition, because you said that it's not the governments that will make impartial inquiries. I agree on the principle, but myself, I'd just like to make a little parenthesis. I have internal information in terms of deputies and all the deputies. We have to give this to Quebec. We are Okay, we're just having a little. We are one of the first jurisdictions of the states in the world before even the government of Canada, which didn't suspend, but no longer recommended at largely the experimental injection, if I remember correctly. It's the beginning of February. The United Kingdom did before, and Canada, the government of Canada, it took place 1 month after. So 1 month after the government of Quebec. So for myself, I don't know how long the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health have realized the secondary effects, but still they moved. There are still obligations, vaccinal obligations in certain places in the United States. We must not think that in the US everything is perfect, whilst in Quebec we can turn around more quickly in terms of jurisdiction, seeing that we're smaller normally. Yes, normally. So I don't want to say that everything is perfect. I just want to be in truthfulness. And the other aspect is that what I heard was that the Minister of Health, Christian Dubé, because I consider it's an error of unconsciousness. Perhaps he was bought in another way, but I don't think we don't have to be in agreement, but I don't think that our Quebec leaders wanted to harm the population. Were they unconscious? Were they attracted to the money? Let's say, for instance, yes, there was the video that came out from the Minister of Health with Arruda who was speaking, AstraZeneca that was speaking, and then they suspended it a few months. And yes, by magic, the best pick in the world and the planet, all of a sudden we're not going to use it anymore with no explanations. I understand, but for me, what I felt was that they thought that the others were okay, and they didn't want to discourage people from protecting themselves in their understanding. Am I naive? You could say that, but that's what I feel. All that to say, that's the advantage with the commission. It allows all sorts of testimonials and to make one's own evaluation. Yes. And people will be able to make an idea. And I tell you, you have hours to listen to. If you haven't listened yet, an hour of the commission, well, it's going to come out. Little clips, they'll come out. It will be more accessible. All that to say that what I learned is that the Minister of Health, Christian Dubé, will do some analyses of certain tubes. We must understand that different batches are more metallic than others. It's been analyzed. No, they said that they didn't talk about it. In fact, all that to say that this autumn there might be some news, that things that might be said that we'll even be surprised that they were said by the government. Just to do a parenthesis, the statistics that are coming out today, it's starting to come out badly. In Frédéric Bastien, who is the Parti Québécois, I knew personally, he was at on the fight for leadership. He passed away because he was doing sports on his stationary bicycle, whilst he was a man who took care of his health and he was in great shape. But stationary bicycle, we're going to have to abandon that now. So in terms of the commission, there was something you were invited to the commission, yes? So you were meant to deposit a report, but you weren't able to do it. Well, a report, it's a testimonial. They asked me to testify. And what I noted from their description is that they're independent from the commission. From the description that you read, Danielle, the commission chooses to be independent, impartial, and that they wish to learn on the management of COVID, including the causes. That's what I understand. And so I was invited. I'm an expert in anti-corruption and also in law, health law. I can repeat everything that as a lawyer, went from when I was a lawyer, as a jurist. This is beyond law. And of course, all of this was okay for them. I sent a short summary, but really not much of what I was going to say. And then I mentioned that I was going to talk about the file that I know where the Supreme Court failed in front of a government in Canada, the Quebec government, Jean Charest's government. Why I had to discuss it was because my conclusion was that the main cause, not the only, the main cause, because otherwise it wouldn't have worked. The main cause of the deficient management of COVID was the systemic corruption. And we understand the corruption in the larger sense that I define is either a lack for each person, it's different, a lack of competence, a lack of integrity, or both. For each person, it's different. And so to arrive at this argument, and so that it be solid, not just we say that the system doesn't work, it has to be solid in terms of an expert in anti-corruption. They had to show that even the judiciary system failed before a cause where the government must be protected, notwithstanding their intentional faults. And there I have the proof in 14 volumes of proof, 2,800 pages, yes. And you had shown, put together something big. You can talk about everything except for that cause. And then me, why can't I talk about it when I have the proof? I'm the one taking the risks. I know I'm risking my life. I know I'm taking risks. And those commissioners, they're like judges. They don't have to evaluate before the witness speaks if it's credible or not. They can evaluate in the report. If they say, oh yeah, she says anything, they can write that in the report and the people can judge, but they don't want to hear the testimonial. I've never seen a judge say, you won't deposit that proof or that witness won't testify. And after, they do what they want. And he does his own analysis. And if we come, and I'm just playing the devil's advocate, yes, that's okay. Yes, of course. Perhaps it's to examine the politics of the government politics in terms of, and perhaps it's the aspect of having the word corruption associated to that. Perhaps you said to the commission, yes, that's not in our mandate. Perhaps the word disturbed them a little bit. We understand usefulness and efficiency of the measures. That's clear. That's pretty obvious. We have tons of reports of damages at this level, but drawing lessons necessary for the future. If we don't address what you wanted to discuss, do you think that we will retain the lessons for the future? Well, first of all, they never said that it disturbed them, that I put as a conclusion that the main cause of COVID is systemic corruption. This didn't bother them that I talked about this. We have to understand this. It's not the subject that disturbed them. It's that I talk about the cause at the Supreme Court. Okay, so the cause at the Supreme Court, they don't want to touch that. Do they have the necessary required level? Because we're talking about a national citizen inquiry. Do they have the level required to discuss it? They can't talk about it, but I'm the one speaking of it with the proof that I have. I can be sued, and I'm already being sued in the disciplinary. I have all the proof. And why I choose to discuss this, I won't say anything if I don't have all the information, because I'm risking a lot. I have to be able to say something that is supported by my experience and my knowledge. And in the past, you were a lawyer. And I had studied in this in the beginning before making another choice. And I can say to the people, it's not easy to have passed the exams, to have studied in that, to have done the exams, the order, the bar, to have received accreditation. It's not nothing. It's not given to anybody. I can't tomorrow morning, even if I speak well, it has nothing to do with that. You understand? It's minute work that you did. Thank you for recognizing this. And I hope to mention that I have a diploma of second level. I said it already, but I'm repeating it in rights and law and politics of health. Second cycle is like master's level. And I have an expertise in medical malpractice. I did obstetrics cause, and I went to the Court of Appeal several times, because when you're David against Goliath, if David wins, he goes to the Court of Appeal. So I was very comfortable to plead in the Court of Appeal, but it's not just pleading. It's extremely demanding work, extreme perfectionism. It's just as much the work of a monk, the practice of law. It's a work of a monk, studied. Every word counts. And so what I have as proof is solid enough that I can deliver it to the Canadian population, because I'm speaking, amongst other things, of the Supreme Court of Canada. Because if the judiciary is there, and courageous, because it takes courage to be truthful. Because if the court is there to protect the population who has the courage independently to say, you abused of your power, the executive or the legislative, so the politics, if the judiciary is there, is courageous, we have the charters to protect us. I said already that I had been a lawyer. We have the charters to protect us. We don't need to change the laws in the sense that the charters and we have it. It's the judges. There's something that didn't work. It wasn't as we thought. And also, we have to say that in the judiciary files, it takes time to reach the Supreme Court, which is the protector of our Constitution, the protector of our Canadian Charter. It takes 10 years. So when you're being attacked by the citizens in a crisis which is said to be sanitary health, we can criticize the proceedings of the other people that were done, but it's enormous. It's long, fastidious. In 10 years, we can lose all our rights and never make it to the appeal court, to the Supreme Court. So that's why this file, if we believe that nothing happens for nothing, if I worked on this file for 10 years from 2011 to until I was no longer a lawyer, that's why I worked on that file 10 years before 2020. It's so that it's to be able to have that proof. Because more that the Canadian population becomes aware that the Supreme Court failed when a government was in question, a faulty government, well, then it's at that time that we'll be able to put pressure through our conscience, pressure so that the judiciary realigns. For myself, I went to the proceedings of François Améléga, for instance. The judges who were there, they know what I pleaded. They know I'm honest, and they know. They sit up straight in their chairs because they all want in the center of their beings to be honest. But sometimes, there's somebody who won't like that. Oh, I'm going to be looked at crookedly. But when I'm in the room with what I did, and they know, the judiciary environment knows it, well, they sit up straight and they say, no, I want to represent what I took as a responsibility to assume my choices. I chose the public responsibility to be a judge. So I am assuming it all the way to the end, to take the risk for everything, the risk for my life. That's being honest. It's to not stop. Somebody says, why didn't you rule it privately? With the National Citizen Inquiry? Well, I tried to, but they failed. I put up my hand. At this time. What's happening is I'm giving them my hand so that they can question themselves, put themselves back into question. So they go into their hearts, and it's with our hearts that our courage arrives, and that we say, and the courage is necessary to integrity, so that they say, because it's not a question that it wasn't pertinent, my testimonial. I repeat it. They never said to not say my testimonial. They said that in my testimonial, in my arguments, not to discuss the file from the Supreme Court. So when somebody says, well, it didn't have anything to do with the objectives of the commission, some people said that to me because the commissioners said that to the others. Well, it didn't respond to the objectives of the commission. Well, it's not true. It was okay for them that I deliver my testimonial, but I want to deliver it completely so that the population doesn't think, oh, she says anything, even the Supreme Court, she can fail. Yes, it can be, she can fail it because I have the proof. That's why it's important that I discuss it in my testimonial. Yes, inaudible. Another subject was discussed about the members of the Supreme Court. We have questions to ask ourselves. Yes, he discussed that. He said that an employee at the heart of the a high-level employee, not a judge, who's in the economic forum, in the World Economic Forum. I'm just citing Luc Hervé in his testimonial. Was he planning on saying it? I have no idea. I put out my hand because we're in the last audiences. It's the Ottawa audiences. There's today, tomorrow, and Friday. And Friday, there's a little bit of space at the end, of course. It would be worthwhile, and it would be a winning move. And furthermore, we'll go quickly because the time is going quickly. We could talk for 2 hours. It wouldn't be a problem. At the worst, we'll come back. But the priority for the moment is that you be heard by the Commission. Is there media that might have contacted you to learn a bit more? Media for the great public, the traditional? Yes. Oh no. Oh. What I can say is that since I pled to the Tribunal of Professions, because there are three files in the disciplinary area, one from the 19th of April from the disciplinary, on the 24th of January in front of the disciplinary of the professions, I felt that there were journalists listening at the back. I have no proof of that. They never again spoke of me negatively in the media. I can say that at a certain point, little doors open and they pay attention. I can say it like that. And I just want to say that in terms of my proceedings in the appeal, I deposited a judiciary control because the Tribunal of Professions did irregular proceedings that were very important. And I have a first audience the 26th of May next at the Palais de Justice of Quebec, and it's in room 3.14. It will be a lot of administration. If ever you come, I want to tell you that I stay pretty centered on my things as long as the audience isn't ended. So I'm a little antisocial. It's quite normal. It's quite normal. You have to be focused and you've got things to do. So that's perfect. So listen, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Gloriane, and share this as much as possible, everybody. There you go. You don't have all the content. If you were hoping to have all the content of what Gloriane was going to say, that we would have for a lot more than half an hour. Why I'm not saying it now is because, nevertheless, the National Commission is a commission that what I feel is that it will be shared over the 6 continents around the world. It's really important what they're doing. And I can't say, oh, it's not good. No, the only thing is that, and I take a lot of risks delivering the testimonial that I would like to deliver. So if I'm going to take those risks, I would prefer it to be shared very largely. That's what will protect me, that it be diffused largely. That's Stéphane Blais who told me the more you're known, Gloriane, the more you'll be protected because they won't go and attack somebody as quickly. It's important that you protect also the people who are working in the shadow because they can be attacked more easily. Yes, we saw this week what happened with Jonathan François. With François, yes, this saddened me. Jonathan, I don't know if it was intentional, but François, it's clear. Yes, it's quite obvious. Okay, so we're going to follow all of this. Thank you very much, Gloriane, for everything that you did because you informed of people of another domain and it's not over. And there are several aspects to this crisis that we experienced. So you are part of one of the aspects that is just as important. It's a loop. We say often that the chain is only as strong as each loop, and the justice system failed a little bit in this great net. Several of the loops